On the surface, a narcissist often looks untouchable. They walk with confidence, speak with authority, and demand attention wherever they go. But what many don't realize is that their ego is far more fragile than it appears. And when that ego begins to collapse, it doesn't happen with loud explosions. It happens silently, in the shadows where no one is watching. Psychologists describe this as a narcissistic collapse, a moment when the carefully built illusion of superiority falls apart. Unlike dramatic outbursts of rage, the silent collapse is quieter, but far more dangerous. It is a slow unraveling of their identity, one piece at a time, until the narcissist no longer recognizes themselves. The silence of this collapse makes it difficult to detect. They may still smile in public, still post happy photos, still wear the mask of confidence. But behind closed doors, the cracks grow deeper. Psychologists note this duality is exhausting for them, pretending in daylight while breaking apart in the dark. At first, the narcissist may try to ignore the collapse. They convince themselves that nothing has changed, that they still hold control. But silence becomes their enemy. Without supply, without validation, they sit in quiet rooms, haunted by emptiness, and it is in this silence that their ego begins to crumble from within. The collapse often starts when their manipulation no longer works. Words that once charmed now fall flat. Lies that once deceived are now questioned. The narcissist realizes they are losing power, and that realization terrifies them. Psychologists emphasize that this fear feeds the collapse, amplifying their feelings of weakness and exposure. Silence also strips away their favorite tool, control over emotions. In the past, your reactions fueled them. But when you walk away and stop responding, they have nothing left to feed on. Psychologists describe this as starvation for the narcissistic ego. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting back their own emptiness. The narcissist's ego collapses because it was never built on authenticity. It was built on illusion, control, and lies. Psychologists compare it to a house of cards, impressive at first glance, but one shift is enough to bring the whole structure down. When silence arrives, the cards scatter, leaving nothing but fragments. This silent collapse brings shame, a feeling narcissists cannot tolerate. They are terrified of being ordinary, of being exposed as flawed. Psychologists note that shame is unbearable for them, and when it rises, they retreat further into silence. They avoid others, hide behind masks, and isolate, all while their ego deteriorates unseen. The collapse is silent, because admitting it would destroy their image. Narcissists need to be seen as strong, successful, and untouchable. To confess failure is unthinkable. So they collapse quietly, hiding their wounds, pretending everything is fine. But behind the scenes, the silence is heavy with rage, shame, and despair. For survivors, understanding this silent collapse is important. It reveals that the narcissist's power was never real. What seemed like strength was only performance. Psychologists affirm that the silence of collapse is the ultimate proof. Without supply, without attention, their ego cannot survive. Their silence is the sound of their empire falling. As the narcissist enters silent collapse, their world becomes smaller. They may still attend social events, but the glow of charm fades quickly. Conversations that once revolved around them now shift elsewhere, leaving them unsettled. Psychologists describe this as ego starvation. The more silence they receive, the more fragile their confidence becomes, until their sense of superiority feels paper-thin and unsustainable. The most frightening part for the narcissist is not being hated, it is being ignored. Hatred still feeds them because it means you care, but indifference starves them because it erases their influence completely. In silence, they confront their deepest terror, that they are irrelevant. This irrelevance eats away at their ego daily, until collapse becomes inevitable and undeniable. During this collapse, many narcissists attempt to rebuild their mask. They may dress sharper, buy new possessions, or chase superficial successes to look untouchable again. But psychologists stress these are only bandages on a deeper wound. The silence keeps reminding them that no matter what they display outwardly, the emptiness inside remains, gnawing at their fragile self. Silence is powerful because it denies them control. Previously, a narcissist could manipulate with a glance, a word, or an argument. But once you no longer respond, they lose their grip completely. Psychologists explain this feels like freefall for them. Without emotional reactions to exploit, they spiral, desperate to find a new anchor, but failing each time. The collapse intensifies when the narcissist compares themselves to you. While they stagnate in silence, they may see you healing, laughing, or building a better life. That contrast magnifies their fear of being ordinary. Psychologists note this jealousy and shame deepen their silent suffering. They realize that while you move forward, they are left behind. In their quiet collapse, insomnia often becomes their companion. Alone at night, they cannot distract themselves with noise or manipulation. Psychologists point out that nighttime silence is when narcissists replay their failures. They cannot escape their thoughts, and the lack of control over your absence keeps them awake, restless, and tormented by emptiness. The narcissist also experiences paranoia during this stage. They fear that in their silence, others are speaking about them, exposing them, or laughing at their downfall. Psychologists emphasize this paranoia comes from shame. They know they have done wrong, so they project that guilt outward. The silence of others feels like a threat to them. Financial or social decline often accompanies silent collapse. Without the same admiration or support, narcissists may lose jobs, friendships, or influence. Yet, they remain quiet about their struggles, hiding behind a smile. Psychologists explain this secrecy as part of their collapse. They would rather suffer silently than admit weakness and risk humiliation. The collapse is also silent, because narcissists fear exposure. If they admit they are failing, the image they spent a lifetime building crumbles instantly. Psychologists note that their silence is a form of damage control. They withdraw to avoid scrutiny, but the isolation only worsens their suffering, deepening the cracks in their fragile ego. For those who have walked away, this silent collapse is eye-opening. It shows that narcissistic power was never real. Behind the mask was fear, emptiness, and fragility. Psychologists affirm that the quietness of their downfall is proof of their weakness. They collapse not in front of crowds, but alone in silence, where truth cannot be denied. As silence deepens, narcissists begin to feel the walls closing in. Their favorite tool, attention, is gone. No one claps for their stories. No one fuels their anger. No one buys into their drama. Psychologists highlight that for a narcissist, this lack of attention feels like suffocation. It is not just discomfort. It is the slow death of their false identity. They may try to replace you quickly, rushing into new relationships or friendships. At first, they act as if the new supply will heal their emptiness, but silence from you still haunts them. Psychologists note that no matter how many people they surround themselves with, the collapse continues because it is not about others. It is about their hollow core. During the silent collapse, their body often begins to mirror their inner decline. Stress shows in their eyes, their posture, their sudden aging, insomnia and anxiety carve deep lines into their face. Psychologists explain that the body keeps score of unresolved emotions. Their outward appearance betrays the silent collapse they are desperate to hide. Isolation becomes both their choice and their punishment. Narcissists may withdraw because they fear being seen as weak, but the isolation only feeds their despair. Psychologists say silence in solitude exposes them to their worst enemy, themselves. With no one to manipulate, they face the terrifying reality of emptiness they can no longer escape. The collapse also robs them of pleasure. Activities they once used to boast, holidays, parties, possessions, lose meaning when no one admires them. Psychologists highlight that narcissists do not enjoy things for themselves. They enjoy the validation others give them for having those things. Without supply, even joy becomes silent and meaningless. Some narcissists attempt to create noise to escape silence. They may spread rumors, start drama, or provoke fights. But when you stay gone and unresponsive, the noise collapses back into quiet. Psychologists affirm this tactic exposes their desperation. The louder they try to be, the clearer it becomes that no one is listening anymore. Their silence is not peace. It is torment. Narcissists do not sit in quiet to reflect or heal. They sit in quiet to brood, to stew in anger, to replay lost control. Psychologists emphasize that this silence is toxic, not restorative. Instead of growing, they wither, and their ego continues collapsing silently, piece by painful piece. The collapse also creates paranoia about time. Narcissists live for admiration in the present, but silence forces them to see the future. They realize that admiration fades, beauty changes, and influence dies. Psychologists stress that this fear of time accelerates collapse. They dread growing old in silence, forgotten, and irrelevant to the world. Survivors may never see this collapse directly, because narcissists hide it carefully. They may look fine online, smiling in photos, or pretending to succeed, but psychologists explain that this facade is only a mask. The truth is written in their silence, in unanswered nights, in empty rooms, in a fragile ego dissolving away from the spotlight. The silent collapse of a narcissist's ego is not an event, it is a process. It begins when supply is cut, grows in the absence of attention, and becomes permanent when silence remains. Psychologists affirm that this process proves narcissists are not invincible. Their downfall is quiet, hidden, but very real, and it is the justice of truth. When supply runs dry, narcissists sink into silent envy. They may scroll through your life from a distance, watching you smile, succeed, or rebuild. Outwardly they dismiss it, but inwardly they ache. Psychologists describe this as corrosive jealousy. The silence of not being part of your joy magnifies their collapse, proving they are no longer central to your world. The collapse is also fueled by regret, though not the kind most people feel. Narcissists do not regret hurting you, they regret losing control over you. Psychologists explain that their regret is selfish, tied only to their loss of power. In silence, they replay what they could have done differently to keep you bound, and that obsession torments them. Some narcissists sink deeper into addictions during collapse. Alcohol, drugs, or compulsive behaviors become ways to numb the silence. Psychologists warn these escapes only accelerate their downfall. Each attempt to drown their emptiness leaves them more hollow than before. The silence always returns, louder, heavier, pressing on their fragile ego until it shatters. The collapse is worsened by the absence of an audience. Narcissists thrive on telling stories, half-truths, and lies designed to maintain superiority. But when people stop listening, their stage vanishes. Psychologists call this narrative collapse. Without listeners, their stories fall into silence, and with it, their sense of identity crumbles like dust in the wind. Psychologists emphasize that silence exposes truth. While narcissists fight to maintain appearances, silence allows survivors to see reality more clearly. The contrast is striking. You heal, they decline. Silence unmasks the narcissist more effectively than arguments ever could. Their collapse is revealed not by words but by the heavy absence of control. In this silence, their arrogance loses its shine. Once bold, they grow hesitant. Once loud, they become withdrawn. Psychologists note this change is not humility, it is fear. They are shrinking in the face of reality. Their ego, once inflated, like a balloon, deflates quietly. The collapse is not theatrical, but steady, stripping them layer by layer. The narcissist fears this silence most, because it leaves them powerless. Control was their lifeblood. Without it, they feel invisible. Psychologists describe invisibility as psychological death for them. The world moves on, people forget, survivors heal, and the narcissist remains frozen. That invisibility is the most terrifying aspect of their collapse. Survivors sometimes wonder if narcissists ever realize their downfall. Psychologists explain that deep down, they do. They feel the emptiness, the loneliness, the fading power. But admitting it would destroy the illusion they cling to, so they collapse silently, pretending outwardly while their inner world falls apart like a house abandoned by time. The collapse is also marked by desperation. Narcissists may send sudden messages, create fake crises, or beg for attention, but these attempts reveal weakness, not strength. Psychologists emphasize that these are the death throes of control. When their ego is collapsing, they will do anything to revive it, but silence keeps killing their influence. Ultimately, the silent collapse of a narcissist's ego is the proof survivors need. It shows that walking away works. It shows that silence is stronger than confrontation. Psychologists remind us that their collapse is not punishment, it is consequence. In silence, their false empire crumbles, and the truth finally takes its rightful place. The final stage of a narcissist's silent collapse arrives when they can no longer keep up appearances. Outwardly, they may still smile, but the people closest begin to notice the cracks. Their once sharp words lose power, their confidence feels rehearsed, and their charm falls flat. Psychologists explain this stage as ego erosion, where the illusion they clung to has dissolved. In silence, they are no longer feared, no longer admired, and no longer powerful. In this stage, many narcissists become consumed by obsessive thoughts. They replay moments of lost control and imagine ways they could have regained it. Yet no matter how many scenarios they create, the reality does not change. You are gone, and the silence remains. Psychologists emphasize that this obsessive rumination deepens their collapse, trapping them in a cycle of fear, shame, and helplessness they cannot escape. Another hallmark of the silent collapse is the inability to connect with others. Narcissists may seek new supply, but even those who enter their lives sense something is off. The mask no longer fits as smoothly, the stories no longer impress, and the cracks are too visible. Psychologists note that each failed attempt at connection drives them further inward, amplifying the silence that suffocates their ego. Financial, social, or professional decline often follows during this phase. Without their usual confidence and persuasive charm, narcissists lose opportunities, friendships dry up, colleagues keep distance, and partners refuse to tolerate manipulation. Psychologists highlight this as a natural outcome. When the mask is gone, what remains cannot sustain the life they built. Their collapse spreads quietly through every part of their world until nothing feels stable. The silent collapse also erodes their sense of identity. Narcissists spend their lives defining themselves through dominance and admiration. Without these, they look in the mirror and do not recognize the reflection. Psychologists call this identity fragmentation. It is one of the most painful experiences for them, because silence forces them to meet the self they always denied existed, empty, insecure, and powerless. Some narcissists may attempt to reinvent themselves during this stage, taking on new roles, communities, or even spiritual facades. But psychologists caution that reinvention without self-awareness only deepens collapse. Because silence always follows them. No matter the costume they wear, the emptiness does not leave. The ego that once demanded validation has nothing left to feed on, and so the collapse continues silently in the background of their daily life. Nighttime becomes especially brutal during this collapse. When distractions fade, the silence grows louder. They toss and turn, haunted by memories of power slipping away. Psychologists explain that insomnia in narcissists is often tied to fear of irrelevance. With no one left to manipulate and no supply to consume, the darkness of night feels endless, reminding them of the emptiness they cannot escape. This collapse is not dramatic for the world to see. It is invisible, but devastating. Survivors may wonder if the narcissist feels pain after being left behind. The truth, psychologists affirm, is yes. The collapse leaves them restless, paranoid, and consumed with shame. But because they cannot admit weakness, they suffer alone, their silence becoming a prison of their own making. For survivors, witnessing or even knowing about this collapse provides clarity. It proves that narcissists are not untouchable. Their cruelty was never strength, but fear. Their dominance only a mask. The silent collapse of their ego is justice, not revenge, but consequence. It confirms that when you walked away, you broke the cycle. Your silence is not weakness. It is the key to their downfall. In conclusion, The silent collapse of a narcissist's ego is the unraveling of everything false they built. Without supply, without attention, without you, their mask shatters, leaving them powerless and exposed. Psychologists remind us this collapse is inevitable because illusions cannot survive silence. For you, the survivor, this truth is freedom. Their silence is torment, but for you it is peace, the beginning of a life no longer defined by their control. The silent collapse of a narcissist's ego is the moment their mask finally shatters. For years they tried to control, but silence exposed the truth. If this video gave you clarity, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more insights. Together we shine light on the truth, reclaim our peace, and support each other's healing journey.